Hi everyone, my name is Jeffrey Lee, and welcome back to the fourth episode where I talk about my book, Fur Trades in Human Civilization. Today we'll be starting Chapter 2, Russia's Eastward Expansion, and going over Section 2.1. So here you can see Russia's a map of Russia's eastward expansion from 1547 to 1725, which is what we'll be going over for the entirety of this chapter. Alright, so first of all, while most European countries expanded westward toward the New World, Russia moved to the east, and in this chapter we'll look over the history of Russia and how they expanded to the large territory it holds today. So Russia originated from the East Slavic peoples, but then in the 9th century, the Vikings from Scandinavia conquered the Slavs and established the state of Kievan Rus. This Kievan Rus was later converted to Eastern Orthodoxy under the influence of the Byzantine Empire, and then later it was conquered by the Mongols and became part of the Golden Horde and was separated into different principalities, including the Principality of Moscow, which later gained independence from the Golden Horde. So starting with a brief history of and timeline of the history of Russia and its expansion, ranging from the late 16th to early 19th century, where they had a series of explorers and conquerors, and they expanded to the different territories to the east, where the fur trade also played a huge role, because basically Russia would impose a fur tax, and this incentivized further conquests for more fur resources. So yeah, let's start with section 2.1, crossing the Ural Mountains and conquering the Siberian Khanate. So firstly, we have the Principality of Moscow in 1470. It stopped paying tribute to the Great Horde, the successor to the Golden Horde, and neighboring the Principality of Moscow were also other different Khanates, such as the Crimean Khanate, the Kazan Khanate, and the Astrakhan Khanate. From 1481 to 1502, the Siberian Khanate, the Nogai Horde, etc., they attacked the Great Horde, and Russia also sent minor military support to the Crimean Khanate, and in 1502 the Great Horde was completely annihilated, and the Crimean Khanate inherited the Great Horde, and this led to various land disputes, such as the Ottoman Sultan making it an Ottoman vassal state, and Catherine the Great annexing it, and so on. And basically this all led to the campaign that led to Russia wanting to conquer the Siberian Khanate in the east. So yeah. So the Siberian Khanate was formed in 1460 from the fragment of the Golden Horde, which spanned the vast region beyond the Ural Mountains, had a population of only 200,000. This area went between two lineages, Talaburga to Yedagir and Ibak to Kuchum Khan. And so this power struggle is what led to the conflict between the Siberian Khanate and Russia. So in 1563, Kuchum Khan, Ibak's grandson, overthrew Yedagir and assumed control of the Siberian Khanate. Continuous power struggles weakened the Khanate's authority, and later in 1573, Kuchum's nephew, Mehmet Kol, led an incursion westward over the Ural Mountains into the Russian region of Perm, destroying many Russian settlements, killing the local Khanty prince, Lord of Russia, and capturing and killing the Russian envoy to the Kazakh Khanate, and this led to the start of the conflict between the Siberian Khanate and Russia. So Russia at the moment was embroiled in 3 wars with the Crimean Khanate, the Rurik dynasty, and also the Livonian War, where Russia fought against the combined forces of Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and was ultimately defeated. Thus, the Tsar authorized the Stroganov family to occupy that Perm region and even to advance into the territory beyond the Urals. So from the 16th century, the Stroganov family, wealthy Russian merchants, operated salt mines and cultivated land in the Perm region, contributing significantly to Russia's wealth. The Stroganovs received Tsar's authorization to build fortresses against the Tatars and the Nogais, and this was also just a defense against the conflicts with the Siberian Khanate. So starting with Yermak's Eastern Crusade, in 1579, the Stroganov family recruited Cossack leader Yermak Timofeyevich in order to strike back against the Khanites. Following a decision at a Volga Cossack military council, Yermak's forces set out on an expedition. In 1582, Yermak led a Cossack army of about 600 men using flat-bottom wooden boats to travel from the Yaik River to the Kama River in approximately 2 months, arriving at Chusovaya Pier in June 28. Kuchum Khan's oldest son, Ali, led several thousand troops to attack Chusovaya, but was repelled by Yermak. Subsequent skirmishes at locations such as the Oro River also failed. Later, in September 1st, Yermak's fleet of 30 to 35 boats, carrying about 600 Cossacks, reached the foot of the Ural Mountains, while Kuchum's nephew Mehmet Kol led Tatar cavalry and Khanty and Mansi infantry to confront Yermak's forces. And however, despite the overwhelming difference in size, Mehmet Kol was wounded and nearly captured, and the Ninjas army quickly fled, abandoning the Siberian Khanate capital, Kashlik, or Sibir. Yermak's Cossacks army, having defeated the Salvins of Tatar cavalry and infantry in a single battle, occupied a deserted capital without resistance, and they seized a large amount of sable pelts, weapons, and horses. Just 4 days later, they offered their surrender, and Khanty Prince Bayar, Mansi Prince Shabiri, and Tatar Prince Sukoliam all presented gifts and pledged allegiance to Yermak. Later on, the Battle of Irtysh River in 1582 between Kuchum Khan's forces and Yermak's Cossacks revealed certain critical weaknesses in the Siberian Khanate military and governance, which are important to understand Yermak's overwhelming victory. So despite, again, the Siberian Khanate's army outnumbering the enemy 10 to 1, they lacked organization and discipline, and they charged en masse, and the injury of their commander led to a chaotic retreat. The power struggle in the Siberian Khanate between the different lineages was also representative of the unorganized and undisciplined army that led to this defeat. The governance structure was a lot looser compared to the sedentary agriculture-based states. For example, there was a lack of a professional bureaucracy, and instead there was a feudal system, there was limited leader authority, and there was also a nomadic lifestyle. And in general, society wasn't very stable in the Siberian Khanate, which also contributed to this loss. So therefore, the defeat of Kuchum Khan's forces, although the Cossacks were trained military soldiers, this was not the primary reason, but instead it was because of the lack of organization and discipline of Kuchum Khan's forces, which are characteristic of nomadic regimes. So even after the significant defeat in 1582, Kuchum Khan continued to pose a threat to Yermak's forces, lurking in the surrounding areas and waiting for an opportunity to counterattack. In December 1582, Bogdan Brizaga, a captain under Yermak, and his men are fishing when they were attacked by Mehmet Kol and killed. And then later there were more battles between them and skirmishes. As a result, Yermak decided to try to secure support from the Tsar, so he dispatched Ivan Cherkis, who later detailed Russia's conquest of Siberia into creation. They traveled by flat-bottomed boats to reach Moscow, and in 1547 the Grand Duke of Moscow was crowned Tsar, and the lengthy Livonian War with surrounding nations drained Russia's resources. The valuable furs brought by Yermak's envoy alleviated Russia's financial crisis, shifting Tsar Ivan IV's policy from indirect rule to direct control of the Siberian Khanate. The Tsar pardoned Yermak and the Cossacks for their past crimes, rewarded them, and provided military salaries, showing how the fur trade led to the expansion and this very important conquest in Russia's history. In May of 1584, Yermak's forces subdued the Khanty tribes along the Irtysh River, extracting tribute in the form of furs. They continued expanding all the way to the Vaigai River, where they captured Mehmet. And then, despite the Tsar's order for Yermak to return to Moscow, he stayed to lead his forces, and external Tatar attacks and internal challenges persisted. Later, the Tatars and Khantis besieged Kashlik, and this led to a huge reduction in their army to less than 300 men. Later, Kuchum's forces launched a surprise attack during a rainstorm, which led to Yermak's death, and as a result, this led to the general Ivan Glukov and Cossack leader Matvey Menshikov to lead the remaining men to keep expanding and to the Siberian Khanate. So eventually, Russia was able to conquer the Siberian Khanate. They led a contingent of several hundred soldiers with artillery to reinforce Russian positions. And then General Vasily Sukin led another 300 soldiers, including veterans familiar with the Siberian geography, to Siberia. And later, Moscow sent scribe Danila Chokov with 500 soldiers to construct Tobolsk fortress. And in 1590, Kuchum's forces, unable to breach Tobolsk, demonstrated the effectiveness of the Russian fortress strategy. Later, they defeated Kuchum near Lake Baikal, and they captured his family and decimated his army. The different fortresses that were built, like Perm and Tata, became trade hubs and fostered population growth, production, and Russian governance. So, despite Kuchum's continued raids, Russian forces steadily expanded their control, and finally they confirmed his death in 1600. The conquest of the Siberian Khanate marked the beginning of Russia's extensive eastward expansion. Kuchum's resistance, along with his attacks on Russian territory, led to the Stroganov's family's defensive militarization, and later this led to valuable fur tributes that helped the economic growth of Russia. As a result, this conquest made the Tsar see how important it was to expand and to gain more rich fur resources in Siberia. And the full fur trade actually accounted for approximately 1/3 of the state revenue, and as a result, they expanded further into eastern Siberia. Yermak's army of Cossacks also served as an unorthodox military force that helped bring Russian success. The Cossacks, primarily residing in the southwestern frontiers of Russia, maintained a degree of autonomy and independence. They were seen as more of an independent group of mercenaries that were trained militarily, and as a result, they were used by the Stroganovs for military purposes, even though they did have a past of crimes. So let's talk about the parallels between the Russian Cossacks and the Chinese Liao military groups. From the 15th to 17th centuries, the Russian Cossacks and the Ming Dynasty Liao people of China were both regional military groups and were similar in geopolitical and military organization. However, there are vastly different historical contexts, developmental trajectories, cultural characteristics, and historical impacts. The Cossacks consistently expanded outward, while the Liao people first focused externally and then internally. They influenced the historical trajectories of Russia and China and altered the course of human civilization. So let's analyze some of the similarities and differences between them, starting with the origin, development, and demise of the Cossacks. So in the turbulent post-medieval Eastern Europe and under the Russian serfdom system, the Cossacks emerged as a semi-nomadic social group comprising of East Slavs, Mongols, and Turkic peoples. When Ivan IV was crowned Tsar, and when he turned the Principality of Moscow into the Tsardom of Russia, the strengthening of serfdom to cope with internal and external pressures led to peasant uprising and continuous serf escapes. They fled to the southern Russian steppes of the Don and Dnieper river basins, and these are primarily inhabited by Mongols and Turkic nomads along the Volga River. Through conflicts, trade, and cooperation with the local Tatars, these fugitives gradually established militarized settlements. They resisted Tsarist pacification efforts and defended against surrounding nomadic tribes, occasionally engaging in plundering wealthy merchants and raiding, evolving into a distinct social class known as the Cossacks, meaning free people. The organization typically elected their military leaders democratically and adhered to collective decision-making traditions. This primitive form of democracy was similar to those found on pirate ships or in primitive tribes, which was born out of the harsh survival conditions faced by the relatively small human groups. In the 16th century, the emerging Cossack groups posed a threat to Tsarist rule. To weaken the Cossacks, the Tsar reinforced serfdoms, tying serfs to the land, and repeatedly launching military campaigns against the Cossacks, though these attempts largely failed. The Cossacks, inheriting nomadic traditions and facing constant raids from surrounding tribes, excelled in cavalry warfare, and their combat prowess made them valuable in defending borders, pioneering agriculture, river navigation, and trade exploration. The Cossacks' formidable military strength were redirected toward these external conquests and helped mitigate internal conflicts and reduce threats to the Tsar. They evolved from a peasant-born class to a privileged military class, playing a significant role in various chapters of Tsarist Russia's expansion history. After the Russian October Revolution, the Cossacks supported different factions in the Russian Civil War, with a majority opposing the Bolshevik regime. The Nobel Prize-winning novel *And Quiet Flows the Don* by Mikhail Sholokhov depicts the changes and emotional experiences of a Cossack village from World War I through the Russian Civil War. Following the establishment of the Soviet Union, the Cossack communities underwent significant economic, political, and cultural changes. Under the planned economy, collective farms and heavy industrializations caused them to abandon their nomadic, semi-nomadic, and independent farming lifestyles. As a result, the Soviet regime also stripped them of their independence and abolished their traditional democratic election, and as their culture was pretty much wiped out by the Soviet cultural framework. Now let's talk about the Chinese Liao military groups. So the Han people of the northern frontier developed a fierce cavalry combat capability. They ordered, as early as the Eastern Han Dynasty, they organized a cavalry unit called the Baima Yicong to counter the northern nomadic tribes like the Wuhuan and the Xiongnu. In the Ming Dynasty, the term Liao people referred to the indigenous residents, military households, and displaced people living under the jurisdiction of the Liaodong Dusi military commission. Approximately 70% were Han Chinese and 30% were Korean, Manchus, and others. The Liao people made significant contributions to the Ming Dynasty's military effects against the Mongols and the Manchus, with notable figures like the southern anti-pirate hero Qi Jiguang and the northern general Li Chengliang, collectively known as Danqi Beili. The massive influx of silver mentioned in the previous chapter caused inflation, while state salaries remained unchanged, and this led to a decrease in the purchasing power of officials, soldiers, and generals. The crude management of the garrison system, combined with scholarly bias against the military and the profits from smuggling, led to collapse of the vassal military organization, and this caused the decline of the Liaodong military group. They instead formed private armies through kingship, clan, and partisan networks, and prominent figures were part of this group. This private army demonstrated strong combat capabilities, but their autonomy posed a threat to the centralized Chinese imperial power. The Liaodong military group incurred significant military expenditures, straining the already depleted Ming treasury, and also this was further weakened by silver shortages, epidemics, droughts, peasant uprisings, and internal strife. As a result, the Liaodong military group played a crucial role in the Manchu conquest of China. After the Qing dynasty established control over China, it implemented policies like the Willow Palisade to restrict Han Chinese access to the northeastern region. By the end of the Ming dynasty, the Liaodong military group either defected to the Qing forces or became commoners, and later the Liao people were dispersed among the Manchu 8 banners, and as a result, they declined over time and faded from history with the fall of the Qing dynasty. So let's talk about the comparisons and reflections between the Cossacks and the Liao military groups. So the Cossacks were a semi-autonomous military group and played a crucial role in Russian expansion. They were used by the Tsar for their military prowess, and their impact was primarily directed outward, expanding the empire's boundaries and influence. Meanwhile, the Liao military groups originated from the border regions of Liaodong during the Ming dynasty, and they were initially an asset in the Ming's conflicts with the Jurchens or the Manchu. And over time, they switched their allegiance to the Jurchens, and then led the aid to the Qing dynasty's rise and overthrowing the Chinese. Their impact was inward, affecting the internal power dynamics and contributing to the fall of the Ming dynasty. So these two groups, despite both being skilled in cavalry and combat, had differing choices and impacts on history. They were both located at the edge of their respective empires and faced discrimination. And, while the Ming dynasty deeply distrusted the Liao military groups, while the Tsar only allowed the Cossacks to operate autonomously. China's fertile agricultural lands and abundant resources, such as the Yangtze and Yellow River basins, provided a stable and prosperous agrarian society, lessening the need for territorial expansion. Similarly, the commercial drive for resources like furs and ginseng became a significant motive for Russian expansion to Siberia. The Cossacks' expansion was driven by pursuit of wealth, and the Tsar rewarded successful conquest with land, exemption, and honors. In contrast, China's long-standing policy of emphasizing agriculture over commerce led to a lack of state support for overseas trade and isolation and limited expansion of Chinese empire. Russia's approach to newly conquered territory involved integrating them into the empire, imposing taxes, and extending state protection. This was a very inclusive strategy that helped consolidate new territories within a few decades. However, conversely, the traditional concept of Chinese Huayi distinction emphasized the cultural superiority of the Han Chinese civilization over the outsiders, and as a result, they just weren't as inclusive as the Russians. The Ming dynasty approach to warfare against the Manchu was seen as a necessary expense to eliminate threats rather than an investment for profit. This contrasted with Russia's strategy of conquest for sustained economic benefit, and the Ming's emphasis on defense rather than expansion contributed to the limited territorial gains and eventual decline. Efforts to integrate and manage frontier regions, such as the Tongtuan system in Liaodong, faced significant challenges due to harsh living conditions, corrupt administration, and declining military effectiveness. They built fortifications that were similar to the Russian approach of building forts to secure newly conquered territories, but the Ming military operations required significantly more manpower, resources, and logistical support. The different approaches of the Cossacks and Liao military groups illustrate the importance of state policies, resource management, commercial incentives, and ideological frameworks in shaping the course of history. During the Changhua era of the Ming dynasty in 1467, Emperor Xianzong of Ming initiated war against the Jianzhou Manchus. Nurhaci's great-great-grandfather Dongshan was captured and later killed while attempting to escape, and this led to the establishment of the Fenghua Qianhu, a military and administrative institution along the Yalu River, south of the Changbai Mountains, to implement the Tangtian and the Liusheng. As a result, the northeastern region was economically backwards compared to the central regions, with low salaries, poor economic conditions, and rampant corruption among officials. There were also many attempts to build a fortification strategy similar to the Russian castle building strategy. However, this was vastly different from the Russian approach because the required manpower, food, supplies, and transport capabilities were very different. During the Ming Dynasty, such exorbitant expenses, along with the immense pressure on the state finances, led to a focus on rapid resolution strategies supported by Wang Huazhen, and reducing the cost of expeditions and improving the input-output ratio has been a persistent issue for central dynasties throughout history. Yeah, so today we went over quickly the Russian expansion of the Siberian Khanate and involvement of the Cossacks. We compared the Cossacks with the Liao military group and saw the differences between those and what that means for building civilizations and being successful with expansion.